Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The preseason is nearly upon us, and the Browns will be in the spotlight Friday night when Shedeur Sanders will start against the Carolina Panthers. Injuries have hit the quarterback room, creating a huge opportunity for Sanders to prove he deserves better than the fourth spot on the depth chart. Here to discuss that and more, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. What's up, Chud?
I'm ready for some football. That's what's up. Are you ready?
I think I am. I've watched 10 training camp practices. You got the joint one in Carolina today, and then the game on Friday night. So yeah, it's about ready, right? You get some tackling to the ground, even though we've seen that a couple times in practice, but you get, quote unquote real football. And I know we're just going to talk about it a ton, Chud, but I can't wait. It's Shedeur Sanders. And
What?
I think there's always excitement for that first preseason game, but this adds a lot of juice locally, nationally. I'm really looking forward to see how he does.
Scott, this is unbelievable. And quarterbacks would be our lead story here, no matter what was going on, right? But there is a ton to talk about with these four guys right now. And it starts with Shedeur and this game on Friday night. And the fact that he's starting, I mean, listen, we know the Browns preseason games, especially in the first half, get big ratings every game, every year, right? Because it's Browns fans. It's
Sure.
the start of the new season. People want to see what's going on, but there's going to be even way more people watching this game than what would have been had he not started, because this brings the casual fan in. This brings maybe even a non-fan in. People are going to want to see how he does as the starting quarterback of the Browns in this preseason game. Yes, he would have played a lot anyway, barring no injury.
Mhm.
But the fact that he's starting and just the element that this adds and what this can do for him, this is a huge deal.
Oh, there's no doubt. And talk about the audience. You have the huge legion of Shedeur Sanders fans who are all over social media and following everything he does and commenting about most things he does or most things people say about what he does. And they probably would have watched regardless, but you know when he's going to play now. And if Dylan Gabriel had been healthy, you probably would have gotten Dylan Gabriel for the first half and Shedeur Sanders for the second half. Now you get Shedeur Sanders out of the gate. And we don't know for sure how long he's going to play, but I would assume it's at least a half. And then he'll turn it over at some point to Tyler Huntley, who they just signed on Tuesday and is new to the team. He was here last year in the preseason, but has to get acclimated. The plan is for him to play, but they still have to get him up to speed. We know Joe Flacco's not going to play. They don't want to play him. We know Kenny Pickett's not going to play because of that hamstring, and I don't think they would have played Pickett in the first preseason game anyway. And then Dylan Gabriel's not going to play because he has tightness in his hamstring, and they just want to be careful with him and not make it any worse. So you're going to get a lot of Shedeur Sanders. And while most starters won't play, Kevin Stefanski confirmed that this morning. While most starters won't play, and he didn't go into super specific details, he did say that Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman won't play at receiver, but everybody else will be available. That means Shedeur Sanders is going to be thrown to guys like Deontay Johnson and Harold Fannin Jr., the rookie tight end. And he'll probably be handing off to rookie running back Dylan Sampson. So there are guys that are going to have big roles or the potential to have big roles on this team come week one against Cincinnati that will be on the field and in the huddle with Shedeur Sanders. And it's a huge opportunity for him. And especially, Chud, we've talked so much about Shedeur Sanders hasn't gotten any first team reps throughout training camp. And that hasn't changed. And while these won't be true, quote unquote, first team reps, because I don't think the offensive line is going to play, and I don't think David Njoku, I mentioned the receivers, but still, you're out there first. You're with a lot of the second teamers or first/second teamers. It's a great opportunity for him. And I mentioned he's number 4 in the depth chart. And it's an unofficial depth chart that they put out. And I hate to read too much into that, but forget the depth chart that is online and printed out on paper. It's what we've seen for the last 2 months or 3 months. He's number 4. He's been number 4 behind Pickett, Flacco, and Gabriel. And now he's at the front of the line for at least this one preseason game. And I'm not sure he could have a better opportunity to prove that he deserves more reps, that he's ready to move up that depth chart, because that's the reason the Browns haven't been giving him first team reps. It's because they don't feel he's ready, and they feel there's a big learning curve, and they don't want to force feed him, right? They think, hey, let's bring him along slowly. He didn't call plays at Colorado. He didn't huddle. He took too many sacks. So all those negatives, all those things that say you're not going to be ready right away is why he's been working in the fourth in the rotation. But now he gets to say, hey, forget all that stuff. I am ready.
Yeah. Scott, I had about like 4 follow-ups to everything
Yeah,
you just said. Number one, the depth chart, Flacco's 1 right now, Pickett 2, Gabriel 3, Shedeur 4, correct?
correct.
Yeah. And you don't read too much into that though. You don't think it's Flacco's job to lose?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think in general, I don't read much into their depth chart. Um, with the quarterback spot, I mean, they could have easily gone Flacco slash Pickett. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if there's. I don't read a whole lot into it, Chud. I don't. I think with Pickett dealing with this hamstring injury, Joe Flacco's the clear number one. Um, I think they were close early in camp, and if you talk to the coach, I didn't necessarily see Kenny Pickett get off to a great start to training camp, but um, the quarterback coach Bill Musgrave said he got off to a stellar start. Tommy Reese, the coordinator, mentioned how he had a really good first 4 practices. So the coaches felt that Kenny Pickett was playing well. So I think it was a close battle between Flacco and Pickett at the start of camp. I think with Pickett's injury, which also affects his mobility when he comes back, and that's to me the separator between him and Joe Flacco is that he can run and that he can create these off-schedule plays. If you take that away, then I think there's a significant edge to Joe Flacco, and
Yeah.
I do think he's number one. I think he's a favorite right now to start Week 1 against the Bengals.
Yeah, I made up my mind mandatory mini camp that it was going to be Flacco, and I was kind of back and forth between the two. Not saying that Pickett can't take it at some point, but I just think that they're going to come out of the gates with Flacco. But we'll talk more about that later. Let's concentrate more on the other follow-ups. How is Shedeur's arm, his soreness? I
Yeah,
mean, he's good to go, right?
yeah. Kevin Stefanski, we're taping this Wednesday. Um, just said maybe half an hour ago, that he thinks he's past it. He got some treatment. That was a little weird, Chud, that we're watching practice Saturday. All of a sudden, he's not in any of these team drills, and Kenny Pickett's not in the team drills. So it felt like a really good chance for Shedeur Sanders to get more work, and yet he wasn't getting any. And Flacco's getting extra, and Gabriel's getting extra. And then it turns out the Browns say he had arm soreness. Sanders blamed it on the stop-start nature of these practices. You throw and then you don't, and you throw and then you don't. Um, so he got treatment. He said Monday he was 100%. The Browns say he just got to work on keeping the arm more loose. Stefanski says a little soreness in the shoulder, but they say he's past it. Shouldn't be effective.
How about Carolina? They're going to play some starters, right? And how is that on defense? Are they going to be playing their first team defense?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Their coach Dave Canales said that they're going to play the starters, including quarterback Bryce Young. So it's another test for Shedeur Sanders. It'll be mostly Browns 2s versus Panthers 1s to start the game, and then it probably becomes 2s and 3s. But at the beginning, at least, you would think the Carolina defense has an advantage. So that's a challenge for Shedeur Sanders. And I think the key for him, Chud. Well, first, before I get to that, so we talked about Sanders hasn't taken any first team reps. He's taken some second team reps, and there's been more of those since Pickett's been out of team drills the last week and a half. But Sanders also had one drill where he went with the second offense against the number 1 defense. So he did have a few reps against guys like Denzel Ward and Carson Schwetzinger. I can't remember if Myles Garrett was out there for those particular snaps. But, that's a taste of what you're going to see. And then that's a real taste of what he's going to see in Carolina on Friday night. I think Shedeur Sanders, for the first thing I'm going to watch is the quick decision making, and not taking sacks. Because he took 94 sacks in 2 years at Colorado. Obviously, that's way, way too many. And I think it speaks to decision making. I think it speaks to the quickness of his thought process, right? Is something here? Can I get rid of the ball? Can I get out of the pocket? It speaks to footwork, which is something he's had to work on. So, if the second team offensive line is struggling to protect, how is he going to handle that? Is he going to get the ball out of his hand and check it down? Is he going to take a sack? Is he going to throw the ball away? Is he going to run backward and take a longer sack? I think that's really important to see when we talk about his development, how to gauge that development to this point.
Scott, I'm not going to predict how he's going to do. I really don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But I will say this. If he does well and he just lights it up and then does well in the next preseason game, that is the one thing, man. I know I just said, my money's on Flacco, but I got to say, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Browns if Shedeur lights it up. This will open a can of worms. People will want him in there starting week 1, Scott.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Chud. Now, I think the Browns, I don't even think that's a thought in the Browns' mind. I know they call this a 4-man quarterback competition. I don't think they have any thoughts of Shedeur Sanders starting week 1. Now, could that change if he lights it up the next 2 weeks? Yeah, then it might be a conversation. What I think is more likely is he pushes Dillon Gabriel to be the top rookie, because Gabriel has struggled. I posted a story to BrownsZone.com this morning about that. We talked to Gabriel on Monday. He's struggled, and it's not, there's so much focus on the lack of height, but I think what's been most troublesome is even when he's outside of the pocket, or it feels like a 7-on-7 drill where there's not a bunch of big bodies around him, he hasn't been as accurate as you'd want him to be. And if you're only 5'11 or 5'10, however tall he is, then you got to be really good in all other areas. And that includes, especially, the accuracy from the quarterback spot, right? Where you ball placement, you got to hit guys, right? You got to make completions. And he has struggled with that. Now, he's also bounced back within those practices, gotten off to bad starts, and then made some good throws later. But I would say that his camp overall through 10 practices has been disappointing. Now you have the hamstring injury that's limiting him and keeping him out of this preseason opener. I think there's a chance there for Shedeur Sanders to close that gap and maybe even surpass Dillon Gabriel if he has a real good, start to the preseason.
Yeah, I was going to ask you more about Gabriel. You pretty much answered it there. Quickly, though, Flacco's looked pretty good, and where's Pickett at right now as far as the injury and where he's at in the last few days of camp that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say Flacco's look fine, Chad. I don't think he's lighting it up, but there's, I don't know if it's 3, 4, 5 plays, throws of practice. So we're talking team drills where you go, oh, that's a Joe Flacco throw, and it's a big time throw. I think he's been pretty careful with the ball. I don't think he's thrown any interceptions. A couple have been dropped, but I think overall, and that's a concern with Flacco, he's thrown a lot of interceptions these last 2 years when he's played. I think he's been careful with the ball. The operation just runs smoother with him. He gets the team in and out of the huddle, feels like he knows where to go with the ball, and I don't think that goes away. And he still throws it great, which is why I think he's the guy week 1. Now, when it comes to Pickett, we got to talk about that hamstring, Chud. And I mentioned it earlier that he's not going to have the same mobility. He talked about even when he gets to team drills, he's going to have to be limited to in the pocket and not scramble. And that's going to, he was trying to look at the positive, like, hey, that's going to teach me to play out of the pocket and I'm going to have to get to my checkdowns. And that's fine. And that's the right attitude to have. But the reality is, one of the reasons the Browns liked Kenny Pickett and thought he had a chance to be the starter is because he makes plays off schedule and he can scramble. And he's done that. And he did that in training camp before the hamstring injury. You take that away, and I just don't think there's a spot where he's better than Joe Flacco. So, he's been in some 7-on-7s. He's been in some 1-on-1 drills, done individuals. And, he looks fine. He's throwing the ball fine. But he admitted he's losing ground by not being in these team situations. And, he's going to be out this week. Even if he comes back for Philly, you're kind of pushing it. So he needs to come back for Philly and needs to be good and pretty healthy in Philly. And that feels like a big ask. And we don't even know for sure that he'll be able to be in team drills in Philly next week.
It's got the Huntley stuff. I mean, I know, some people are like, oh my gosh, another quarterback. But really, isn't it much to do about nothing? I mean, isn't it more of just ironic that they have 4-5 quarterbacks, if you include Watson, and they have to go get another guy to get through these games because of the injuries? I mean, like, that's all this is, right?
Oh yeah, I think that's fair to say, Chud. Yeah, it's interesting because now they have 6 quarterbacks out of the 90, right? Because
Right.
Deshaun Watson counts. So yeah, they have 6 out of 90. But yeah, I mean, he's not going to make the team. They just need a guy to play Friday. Like that's the reality. They need a guy to play Friday. If you're on the sideline, then unsigned, then why wouldn't you come here? You never know. You never know if somebody gets hurt. He wound up starting 5 games for Miami last year. You want to be in a camp if you're Huntley, but like I don't think this turns into anything.
Yeah. All right. So breakdown this week. So we're taping this on Wednesday. The Browns are practicing with the Panthers on Wednesday. Then tomorrow off, and then the game on Friday. It's just one practice session. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. What do you look for in the game away from the quarterbacks? What's your main focus on? What do you want to see out of this team? What are the results you're looking for?
Yeah, there's a couple things, Chud. I would say the rookies, because I expect, if not all of them, well, Gabriel won't play, but I would think the rest of them would play. How do they do? And it's not just Shedeur Sanders, who we've already talked about. It's Carson Schlesinger, who's had a great camp at linebacker. Does that translate? Again, I'm assuming he plays. Dylan Sampson, he's going to have a bigger role without Quinshon Judkins, and we don't know what's going on with Judkins, when he's going to come back. So, I think that's worth watching. Deontay Johnson, I talked about earlier. I think he's going to play. In Shedeur Sanders, if I were Shedeur Sanders, I would look for the guy that's been to the Pro Bowl to get the ball to. Does he look in shape? Does he look mentally into it? Because if he's both those things, he has a chance to be your number 2 receiver. He also has a chance to be cut if he doesn't have those 2 things. So he's a big question mark. And then I want to see how they run the ball. We talked about the recommitment to the run, and I don't think that changes even without Judkins. Let's assume Judkins isn't here week 1 or to start the season. They still have a commitment to the run game. I feel like the defensive line has been winning in training camp, and maybe that's to be expected with Myles Garrett and Mason Graham and Malik Collins and Shelby Harris and Alex Wright and all the guys they have at end. So let's go see how this line, even though it's probably the number 2 line, how it does against Carolina. Can it pass protect, but also can it create some holes in the run game? Because I think the Browns will run it a good amount down there.
All right, Scott, we're going a little bit shorter than we normally do today, and we can get back to any last things you want to hit, but I'm going to do something here that we've done in the past, and boy, we get real creative here. But it's brought to you by Petrak's Pebbles, everyone's favorite breakfast cereal here in Northeast Ohio. Simply 4 downs. I'm going to give you 4 more topics. You got a minute on each, and that's it. I will have to buzz you if you go past. So I want to hit 4 quick things real quick. So far, yeah. Defense ahead of the offense. Is that true to say so far in camp?
No doubt. And I think the offense has had some periods where it's looked better and maybe won the periods, but overall the defense, and I do think it starts with that front. The guys are in the backfield a lot, whether it's a pass play or a run play, and that makes life hard. It makes life hard on the quarterback, makes life hard on the running backs. Now, there's no sacking the quarterback, so the plays continue and you can have a completion later, but there's been a lot of plays where you go, oh, that would have been a sack. So I think that's natural. I also think it's the makeup of this team where the defense is going to be better than the offense.
33 seconds. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Denzel Ward having a great camp.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about defense, and I should have mentioned him. He's been outstanding, Chud. And Jim Schwartz the other day said that he's been coaching for 30 plus years, and Denzel Ward's the best cornerback he's ever coached. And Denzel's talked about maybe being in the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year, that he believes he's that talented. He's coming off his best season. He looks so good. And you start to ask guys, or not start, I've been doing this for a while, but re-ask guys what makes him so special. And it's just a combination of everything, but it starts with his ability to mirror receivers. His feet are so quick that he adjusts. A guy can make a move and you feel like he's burned, and then he catches up so fast. He's an amazing athlete. He is taking on a bigger leadership role. He hasn't missed a practice the last two off seasons, even in the voluntary practices. So, I think he's really coming into his own, and I think he can make a run to be the best cornerback in the league.
Wow. Well, that was a minute 3. I'll give it to you because you went so short on the first one.
I got 24 seconds in the bank.
So that brings us that's right. So now we go to third down. Talk more about the running backs. You had mentioned it as something you're going to look for in this game, but how is that progressing in camp with their situation there?
Yeah, it's interesting. You have Jerome Ford. He's going to be the guy. Look, this is all assuming Quinshon Judkins is not here week 1. And he's not in camp. He's unsigned, still going through the legal stuff. So I think that's a safe assumption. So it's going to be Jerome Ford. And then I think it's going to be a lot of Dylan Sampson, the rookie 4th rounder out of Tennessee. Pierre Strong Jr. is hurt. He didn't make the trip. I don't think he made the trip to Carolina. He's not going to practice or play. They signed Travion. Oh God, I don't want to screw up the last name. A former Bengals running back the other day. He's been in the league, but he doesn't have a whole lot of carries. I think that speaks to, hey, they're still trying to figure this out from a depth perspective standpoint. Who's going to get the carries? So it's going to be interesting, Chud. I think you can always find, not always find, but I think, when cuts happen, maybe you bring in a running back. I'm not sure that room won't change a little bit. But it does bear watching. And, I like Jerome Ford more than a lot of people do. I talked to him last week. I thought it was a good interview. We talked about his mindset and, the fact that he took a pay cut and they draft two running backs to, take a lot of his reps. And, he says he's just here to work and he's committed and all those kind of things. But he needs to be big. He needs to be good. And we saw glimpses of it, but he needs to be more consistent. And then they need Dylan Sampson. Maybe they get something from Amani Marshall. He's an undrafted rookie. He's a big dude. Physically, he's kind of like a Quinshon Judkins. And a Travion Williams. That's the guy from Cincinnati, but doesn't have a lot of carries in his career. So they're going to kind of piece it together, and it's going to be running back by committee, Chud.
All right, and let's go to 4th down. In order to run the ball, the offensive line's got to come through, and they had a special visitor during camp this week, huh?
Well, Joe Thomas. Yeah, it was nice to see. I ran into Joe at the Gold Jacket dinner down in Canton on Friday. Went down to see Mary Kay Cabot give her speech. It was great. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. In the joke she tells about Bill Belichick it's just hysterical. But I ran into Joe Thomas down there. Great to see him. And then he's at practice on Monday, goes to meetings with the offensive linemen, practices. He's giving pointers, working with DeJuan Jones, who's at left tackle. And it's hard for DeJuan Jones because he's making the switch to left tackle and he's lined up against Myles Garrett a lot. And that can wear on you. It can eat away at your confidence. So he got some work with Joe on Monday, and DeJuan Jones is going to be such a key to this offensive line, Chud, because you kind of know what you have in the other 4 guys, assuming they stay healthy. But it's DeJuan Jones at left tackle, and he needs to be the guy. And it's been a rough camp, and I don't know how much to put that on Myles Garrett versus DeJuan Jones. And I think that's something you'll get a better idea against Carolina and Philly is how he does, because neither of those teams has Myles Garrett.
All right, well done. 4 downs brought to you by Petrak's Pebbles. And you brought up the Mary Kay deal. I was going to bring that up in closing here, at least for me. But you had good time in the Hall of Fame ceremonies. It was positive experience.
Oh, yeah, it was great. I hadn't been down there for the Hall of Fame until Joe Thomas got in 2023, and that was cool. We did the Hall of Fame game and then the ceremony on Saturday. And it was cool. It was the first time I've been down there. A lot of pomp and circumstance. I know some people go every week, or not every year, right? If you're from Canton, or that's a tradition, and I understand it. You get to see a lot of, you're just walking around like at the Gold Jacket dinner. You're walking around, and I see all these Hall of Famers lined up, and it's just cool to be in that atmosphere, be in that setting. Um, anyway, so I thought that was cool. Mary Kay's speech was phenomenal. And just reminds me, the Canton, it's an hour away, and it's got all this cool stuff. And then the actual Hall of Fame is there all the time. And now Mary Kay's got a plaque in it. But I talk to some people every once in a while. They'll be like, "Oh, I haven't been to the Hall of Fame in forever." And I get that, but it's something people need to remember and go to, because I think it is a local treasure.
Yeah, I always enjoyed it when I've been down there. I've gotten to go a couple times, and it's been a while, but certainly I agree. And it's another gem in Northeast Ohio that we have. Well, that's it for me, Scott, unless you got anything else. Next week, we'll actually, for the first time in a long time, be breaking down a game.
Yeah, we'll have the preseason opener to talk about, certainly, and then they go to Philly for 2 joint practices, and then it's a Saturday afternoon preseason game. Again, I think this is worth pointing out, Chud, and we're seeing it today in Carolina as we tape this. The starters will get a lot of work in the joint practices, and then you see the backups and young guys will get a lot of work in the preseason games. So that's how they're going to divide it. Both are extremely valuable, but you can script practice better in the joint practice in the game. There's no hitting the quarterback. Those kind of things. You can take care of your players better from an injury perspective. So that's why you'd like to get your starters their work there, and then not as much in those preseason games.
Yeah, no question about it. And who knows in the future what we might see with the preseason. It's ever changing, and the regular season to that degree. So, we'll watch it evolve. No question.
Yep. Yeah, right. You're right. We could have another preseason game taken away. You never know. But it's interesting. I will say, and I think I don't know if we talked about last week or not, Chad, the fact that they gone live tackling, it's just another indication how this year is different. The intensity's been increased. The urgency's been increased, coming off Dream 14, coming off a slower camp a year ago. So I wouldn't be stunned to see starters get maybe a little more preseason run. But again, that will probably come in that last game against the Rams at home, August 23rd, because you don't want to double up the joint practices and then the preseason games.
All right. Scott, it's been good. Do you got anything else?
No, I think we're good, Chud. I appreciate the time as always. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they always say, like, subscribe, whatever. So I guess people should do that. I've never asked anybody. I don't know if people are doing it on their own or not, but it can't hurt, right? So I'll throw that in there. But no, I appreciate it, Chud. I appreciate everybody for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.